This video should be a no-brainer. The special grades are the strongest characters in Jujutsu Kaisen behind Sukuna himself, so in theory they should have no problem beating him if they all work together, right? Well, I'm not sure that's the case anymore. The longer this fight against Sukuna goes on, the less convinced I am that they could beat him, so I thought it would be interesting to go through a few different forms of Sukuna and see how he would fare against them with a differing range of abilities. We'll be going over the Meguna form, current manga Sukuna, and peak Heian Sukuna. But before we can get into the matchups, we need to quickly establish which abilities each of the 4 special grades has access to. For the sake of simplicity, we are going to assume that all 4 special grades are at their peak that we see. The reason I say that we see is because they all have really high potential peaks. And if we go off potentials, then this video becomes a lot less grounded in the source material and it goes from being analysis to basically writing fanfiction. So this is what I have interpreted as the peak of each special grade. First up is Gojo. Gojo hits his peak at the beginning of his fight with Sukuna, as he has a full understanding of the limitless technique, obviously, meaning he has access to blue, red, purple, and infinity. He also has his domain expansion Unlimited Void at full power, a simple domain Falling Blossom of Emotion, and of course the cursed energy efficiency and perception of the 6 eyes. Next is Yuta, and his peak is his most recent iteration when we see him fighting Sukuna with Yuji. In this fight we see he's copied Jacob's Ladder, Sukuna's technique Cursed Speech, Sky Manipulation, Charles's manga technique, and the technique that places an inviolable barrier on a Shikigami's path. He would also have access to his domain Authentic Mutual Love, his capability to fully connect with Rika, his ability to output positive energy, and his upgraded durability that he gained during the time skip. Following Yuta is Geto, who hits his peak right before the Night Parade of 100 Demons, where he has all 4,000 of his cursed spirits undivided and his inventory cursed spirit with Playful Cloud in it. At this point he would also have maximum Uzumaki and have 1 special grade in his possession. And finally, for Yuki, it's just what we see in her fight against Kenjaku. So she has her technique, Garuda, and simple domain. While Yuki does have a domain expansion, we never see it in use, so it's not something we can really take into account. The first form I want to cover is Meguna, which is the form Sukuna takes to fight Gojo. In this form, he has access to not only his own technique and domain, but also the entire 10 Shadows technique, most notably Maharaga, and the Shadows themselves. This allowed him to go toe-to-toe with Gojo, and the duo was close to evenly matched, but Sukuna ultimately lost to Gojo before revealing the development of the slash that cuts the world. Just this short analysis reveals the issue with the Meguna form. Without multiple adaptations from Maharaga, it has no way to get through Gojo's infinity besides Malevolent Shrine. Malevolent Shrine is also the aspect of Sukuna that poses the biggest threat to the rest of the special grades, as none of them have the ability to heal in the way Gojo did, which means this domain would be far more lethal against them than it was against him. As such, the special grade's first priority should be disabling Malevolent Shrine. There are 2 main ways to do this. First is the way it happened in the manga, where Sukuna suffers too much brain damage to open his domain again, and the other is to try and prevent him from doing the hand signs to open his domain. Of these 2 options, the first is definitely better, as it is a permanent solution that cannot be bypassed. This means the best course of action for these special grades is to let the Gojo and Sukuna fight happen as it did in the manga until both of their domains are disabled. At this point, the other special grades would get more involved, with the goal of forcing Sukuna into a position where he needs to summon Maharaga instead of just fighting with the wheel behind him. This is because if Maharaga is busy with other targets, it cannot adapt to infinity, giving Gojo more time to just beat off Sukuna and use red and blue without having to worry about the abilities suffering adaptation. If the special grades can force Maharaga's summoning, it would be best for Yuki and Yuta to separate the Shikigami from Sukuna and then take care of it quickly. These 2 would be an ideal duo for beating Maharaga, as Yuta's vast amount of techniques will slow down Maharaga's adaptation, and they also get support from Rika. The goal for them is to compromise Maharaga via Cursed Speech or another ability, and then have Yuki land a hit with her full cursed energy imbued into 1 attack in order to kill Maharaga without any adaptation. Really though, if they can't deal with Maharaga in 1 hit, they just have to keep it busy until Gojo deals with Sukuna, which shouldn't be too hard for him without Maharaga. As for Geto, he would support Gojo from a distance, summoning cursed spirits targeted at Sukuna in order to deal chip damage over time and keep Sukuna guessing. Yeah, that's kind of the best he can do. Unfortunately, he's not going to be all that useful. The main hole in this strategy is if Sukuna dissolves and then recreates Maharaga in order to get the Shikigami back in play with him and Gojo, as this would leave Yuta and Yuki alone without much to do, and Gojo's infinity is once again at risk of being adapted to. But honestly, Maharaga being resummoned isn't actually that much of a bad thing. Maharaga is an extremely expensive Shikigami to summon thanks to its power level and size. Even in the original Gojo and Sukuna fight, Sukuna only summoned him 2 times rather than using summoning to reposition him more liberally. And even if Sukuna does decide to resummon Maharaga, Yuta and Yuki can just separate him again and continue their goal right away, while also burning through a decent chunk of Sukuna's cursed cursed energy. In the event Yuta and Yuki can deal with Mahoraga before it adapts to infinity, then they will completely disengage from the battle along with Geto, letting Gojo fight Sukuna one-on-one since Sukuna would have no way to actually hurt Gojo with no way to get through infinity. Disengaging will allow Gojo to go hog wild and do whatever he wants without worrying about hurting anyone else. This should result in Sukuna dying or being incapacitated, either of which is considered a win for the special grades. Next is current manga Sukuna, but before we get into him, please consider subscribing. We just hit 40,000 subscribers and it made me realize just how close we are to 50k, so if you enjoy the videos, please consider subscribing. It would really help out the channel and it means a lot to me. Oh, also join the Discord. Anyway, current manga Sukuna does not have the 10 Shadows technique or a domain, but he does have the slash that cuts the world on the condition that he chants and does hand signs with it. Despite having less tools at his disposal, this Sukuna is still a huge threat, as the slash that cuts the world gives him an attack that is effective against Gojo. This means the previous strategy of having Gojo fight Sukuna one-on-one wouldn't really work here, as he can be easily cut by the slash. Instead, I think it would be best if they employed another strategy that we've already seen, Yuta's domain. Yuta's domain is one of the best tools the special grades have against Sukuna, as the threat of the technique imbued in the domain forces Sukuna to use Hollow Wicker Basket, using up 2 of his arms, which makes the hand signs needed for the slash harder to execute. By imbuing Jacob's Ladder into Yuta's domain, Sukuna will instantly be nerfed by a large margin, and considering Yuta and Yuji were able to find success with their plan, a similar plan should work for the special grades. The first step is to prevent Sukuna from speaking, as this will prevent him from using his chants in general. This will be done via an all-out assault from the special grades, with Gojo keeping Sukuna's focus while the other 3 try to rip out his stomach tongue and regular tongue. From here, they need to focus on ripping off or cutting off Sukuna's arms in order to disable Hollow Wicker Basket. Of the 4 special grades, the only one with a sword is Yuta, so he will become the most important one here, as cutting off arms is far more easier than ripping them off. While Yuta and Yuji only cut off 1 arm and restrained Sukuna's other 3, for the special grades, getting rid of all 4 shouldn't be too much of an issue and will help them more in the long run, as amputating all of them will force Sukuna to use reverse curse technique on them in order to use his technique again. If they cut off all 4 swiftly enough, they could completely prevent Sukuna from doing anything and then really lay into him. Jacob's Ladder, Maximum Uzumaki, Yuki's full power punches, the whole 9 yards, until Sukuna is just a beaten husk on the brink of death. If their goal is just beating Sukuna, then this strategy should work and Sukuna should die. I can't see him overcoming everything the special grades have to throw at him while being blasted by Jacob's Ladder. However, if their goal is rescuing Megumi like it is in the manga, then things get a lot more complicated. Here's the issue: we don't know the best way to neutralize Sukuna in the long term, which is likely necessary as they need to figure out a way to actually separate Megumi from Sukuna. If they can figure out a way to restrain Sukuna long term, they could transport him to Yuji and let Yuji talk to Megumi via his punches. And I think the best way to restrain Sukuna is to do it mentally, by having him suffer a full Unlimited Void for an extended period of time. Unlimited Void has been known to break the minds of normal people for up to a month, so it should give them at least an hour or 2 on Sukuna, right? The issue here though is that they would want to give Sukuna the full dose for as long as possible and as soon as possible after their assault, meaning the special grades would also suffer the mind melt unless they were touching Gojo. They could set up some kind of signal that dictates it's time to touch Gojo, but if the signal is obvious for them, then it runs the risk of Sukuna catching on too and also going to touch Gojo. The other issue to consider with this strategy is the fire arrow, as only Gojo would be immune to its effects, but if they can successfully cut off all of Sukuna's arms, then it should be neutralized. Plus, I'm pretty sure they all have reverse curse technique besides maybe Geto, so it shouldn't outright kill them, just give them some Maki-esque burns. Regardless, I do think the special grades can take this Sukuna as well, which means it's time to move on to peak Sukuna, which is Sukuna with his domain in his Heian era form with Kamotoke and the World Slash. This one is extremely hard, but it might still be winnable. The biggest issue here is pretty obviously the combination of his domain with the World Slash, as the only person able to survive Sukuna's domain is likely Gojo, but Gojo doesn't really have a way to easily survive the World Slash. The chanting and hand signs that Sukuna is required to do would give Gojo the chance to prepare and attempt to evade, but that doesn't guarantee a survival. I think the best strategy in this scenario is to follow the idea behind the Kenjaku fight. So destroy Sukuna's domain and then hit him hard while Sukuna is in technique burnout. But this is obviously much easier said than done. I think just having Yuta and Gojo enter Sukuna's domain would give the special grades the best chance of success, as Gojo has multiple anti-domain techniques that can help with Sukuna's domain, and Yuta can heal himself reliably with his large cursed energy pool while also having Rika attack. Having multiple people in the domain should also force Sukuna to choose his targets more more carefully, and this can be pushed even further with assistance of cursed spirits from Geto. This is one of the few times a barrierless technique is worse than a barriered one, as Geto can just flood the domain with cursed spirits from a distance in order to distract Sukuna, as we know that cursed spirits have the ability to obscure cursed energy detection and could obviously obstruct Sukuna's physical vision as well. The cursed spirits could potentially also do some damage to Sukuna if Geto sends in stronger ones. Any amount of damage will assist in injuring Sukuna enough to make his domain collapse, but to be honest, it's likely that even special grade cursed spirits won't be able to do much to Sukuna, as we all know what happened between Jogo and 15 Finger Sukuna. Another possible strategy is for Gojo to not open his domain at the same time as Sukuna, instead relying on reverse curse technique and his anti-domain techniques to assist him in Sukuna's domain. The goal here is for Gojo to hurt Sukuna enough that his domain collapses without Gojo opening his own, so that Gojo can open Unlimited Void without Malevolent Trend contesting it, ensuring Sukuna sustains brain damage from the sure hit. This is a decent alternative, but it still has one pretty big hole. It is possible that Sukuna can activate Hollow Wicker Basket faster than Gojo can draw his domain. This seems unlikely considering Sukuna didn't activate the technique until after Yuta's domain was drawn, implying that Sukuna won't use the technique until he's in a fully formed domain, and for Unlimited Void, it's already too late if that's the case. But even if he can use Hollow Wicker Basket before Gojo draws his domain, Gojo will still have an advantage in Unlimited Void because of the restrictions in Sukuna's technique usage. Regardless, their first goal has to be getting rid of Sukuna's domain if they even want a chance. And even if they succeed in this goal, it's still not going to get much easier as a new big issue arises: Kamutoke. Kamutoke is a replica of one of Sukuna's ancient cursed tools, and it basically allows him to fire electricity, giving him yet another great ranged option. The issue with Kamutoke is we as the readers don't know exactly how strong the electricity is, as we've only seen it used against Kashimo, who is completely immune to its effects. If it's as strong as Kashimo's electrical discharge, then these special grades are in big trouble, as it would be able to tear through them without issue besides, of course, Gojo. If this is the case, it means the special grade's new first priority is separating Kamutoke from Sukuna, preferably from separating the hand that he's holding it with from the rest of his body. This will be easier said than done, as the King of Curses will be able to use both Kamutoke and the Slash That Cuts the World simultaneously. The special grades would probably have to get pretty creative here. Yuta would become extremely important, as he is the only special grade that can prevent Sukuna from acting with cursed speech, and would also have the easiest time dissecting Sukuna, as we've already covered. But there might be a better solution: giving Yuki Playful Cloud. Playful Cloud is a curse tool that gets stronger the more physically strong a user is. We don't know exactly how this would work with Yuki's mass addition abilities, but considering how hard she can hit with just her fists, Playful Cloud could allow her to tear through Sukuna in general. Now, it is possible that Playful Cloud responds only to physical strength and not the alterations of a cursed technique, in which case this won't be a great combination, so it might be worth giving it to Gojo instead, since he seems to be the most physically fit, with the way his muscles bulge through his compression shirt and the well-defined muscles of his chest and his 6'2" frame. Anyway, giving Gojo Playful Cloud should also allow him to hit Sukuna's hands more accurately than the others, thanks to the perception of the 6 eyes. And this could be another effective way of nerfing Sukuna, since you can't really do hand signs if your hands are all busted up. This combined with Yuta cutting off the hand that holds Kamutoke should nerf Sukuna enough for another win. But it's not nearly as easy as I make it sound. Remember, this is still Sukuna. On top of being the strongest sorcerer of all time and one of the most genius sorcerers of all time, he also has the most plot armor of anyone in Jujutsu Kaisen, and that seems to be an insurmountable feat for the special grades considering they all have next to none. But seriously, a lot of the times that I say could in this video, I mean it is a chance, not a guarantee. So much could go wrong in each of these strategies that they're more of gambles than anything else. But there is one strategy that I think they could use to guarantee a win on all 3 versions that we covered: Yuki's Black Hole. Yup, unless Sukuna has a secret Heian era technique that allows him to resist a black hole, Sukuna is just gonna get spaghettified, and that's the end of it. Obviously, the special grades would not want to use this ability up front because they don't want anyone to die, but it would definitely work as a last resort. Anyway, I don't really have much else to say on this topic, so I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. This channel has grown so much over the past 6 months, and it's all because of you. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And I'll see you again next week for another video.